Thanks so much for listening to No Lions Here with me, Big Panda. Hey everybody, welcome back to No Lions Here. My name is Big Panda and I'm a recovering sex addict. On today's episode, I am truly honored to introduce Ed Tilton. Ed is a distinguished leader in the behavioral health care with a proven track record in the recovery industry. Armed with a master's in public administration focusing on healthcare management, Ed has showcased remarkable expertise in the public health initiatives, grant management, and private sector program development. His extensive background encompasses various aspects of healthcare, including clinical and business operations, mergers and acquisitions, and strategic planning. Formerly a key player at Valiant Living, Ed played a pivotal role in shaping a male-specific program addressing co-occurring disorders. There, he successfully led the establishment and oversight of operational, clinical, and financial objectives, broadening the program's scope across all clinical care levels. As the current president of Begin Again Institute, Ed leverages his wealth of healthcare management experience to drive new business strategies, foster relationships, and expand the Institute's impact. His primary focus remains on aiding individuals struggling with intimacy disorders and achieving lasting recovery. Leading the dynamic team at Begin Again Institute, Ed continues to propel the Institute's mission forward. His combination of strategic vision and hands-on leadership ensures the institution's transformative impact in the recovery industry. With an unwavering commitment to healthcare excellence, innovation, and patient-focused care, Ed Tilton stands as a catalyst for positive change in the field of behavioral health care. Ed, thank you so much for joining us, and welcome to No Lions Here.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's an honor to be on the show, and it's even more impressive when you say all those things out loud so nicely about me. So thanks for taking the time to do that.
Yeah, absolutely, man. No problem at all. Again, I think it's important to do the research in the background checks on my guest, and kind of pump the tires a little bit. We all like our tires pumped every now and then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice little hockey lingo there for you.
Yeah.
So Ed, tell me, man, what got you started? What brought you to the industry? What got you involved? I'm assuming as a little kid, you didn't wake up one day with, "Hey, I want to be, a president of a treatment center."
Yeah. That's, I would say there was a lot of things that kind of shaped my path to getting here. Growing up in a small community was probably one of the more pivotal roles in kind of understanding the importance of community. So I grew up in a town of 75 people. So there was always a reason to kind of ask people like how they were doing and what you could do to help. And then, pair that with my own journey in recovery, then kind of led me to a place of being of service to others and really kind of seeing that importance in community, and through a number of different relationships and opportunities, as you mentioned, it landed me in a role as a grant manager, and in being able to kind of see from a larger perspective, hey, what were people at large looking at when it came to helping people that were struggling with behavioral health concerns, mental health, various addictions or compulsive behaviors. And, sadly, it wasn't a fairy tale ending. When I got into some of the larger conversations with how does the state view concerns, or how does the federal government view these concerns, it was pretty bleak, to be honest with you. So as I transitioned away from the public sector, I went into really a focus on how do you help men find and sustain tractional recovery. Knowing all the pieces that I had accumulated, it wasn't as simple as just providing a service. It was being able to understand what's the culture like to be a man? How do you create safety for men? How do you accept, their past in a non-judgmental way, while also creating that container that supports that as well. As men, we're only as vulnerable as the least vulnerable guy in the room. So oftentimes I think that there's a belief that men are a lot of things, but one of the biggest things that I think we are is seeking acceptance from other men. And our position within the tribe is very important to us. And many of us don't acknowledge that we have a desire to have a community or, a tribe or a pecking order, so to speak. And that also can become problematic. And so then when you start layering in all of the work that's done, not just at a service level, but a cultural level, an emotional level, and then at a spiritual level, that's ultimately how you can start to develop your own focus in a career. And so that's what I did. I was very fortunate to get a mentor by the name of Jonathan DiCarlo. He helped me really kind of understand a lot of what it means to be of service in the private sector. Not just a person that's moving numbers around and kind of putting projections together, but really kind of how do you build what I would call a mission-driven margin? How do you still kind of keep the mission at large? And so, ultimately, my journey to BAI went from it went from the government in a very public sector space to understanding that more needed to be done, to then transitioning into a consulting role where I got to see what all was out there and what were people doing and what did trauma-focused care really look like, and how we could improve it from just being a program that said they were trauma-focused, but it just meant that they had a yoga mat and a horse, to really being worthy to say, hey, we're willing to work with you on your trauma, to then really being able to transition into taking ownership in particular programs. So like you had mentioned, Valiant Living is a great program that I was affiliated with, 90 days, helping men with not only sex addiction, substance addiction, but also money and finance disorders, and gaining a lot of experience there, and then being able, to get called up to begin again, and an opportunity to do truly intensive work that's trauma focused has been a dream come true for me. It's been amazing.
Yeah. What was your first introduction to BAI? What was your first role there with them?
So my first role was really, it was the chief operations officer, and it was really how do we grow this offering? How do we grow this opportunity? When I came on in 2020, we were offering about 12 intensives a year, so about one a month. And essentially what we were offering wasn't really matching up with what we were seeing in terms of the need. And so it was really, how do we operationalize this to help as many people as possible? the mission for Begin Again is really to reduce the suffering in relationship. And then the action in that mission is really to build a community to help heal a community. And so really being able to move from this best kept secret in Boulder, Colorado, to really having it expand outwards to say, hey, if you're suffering as it relates to sexual anorexia, porn addiction, love addiction, we're here and we're able to help. The big piece that I'm really proud about when it comes to Begin Again, though, is that we are truly a trauma-focused program that happens to specialize in intimacy disorders. We're not an intimacy disorder program that's trying to be trauma-focused. And so the difference for us is everything. The difference is we're not chasing symptoms. We're really working to create a container to talk about the source. So what past emotional wounds led to, the behavior that's causing you problems now, that's keeping your relationship on rocky ground, and how do we really work to resolve those pieces, give you space and distance to find some of that freedom, and then connect you with the right continuing care plan, protocols, and services to build off of, to put this thing in the rearview mirror.
Yeah. I know that, and I think that you guys do just a fantastic job of the trauma focused stuff. Because I remember when I was there, yeah, we touched on some of the behaviors, but the focus wasn't on the behaviors. Like
right.
Me and the other guys in my cohort, like, yeah, we would talk about our behaviors when we were at the house, after clinicals all day. But, in clinicals, it was more focused around the trauma, the feelings, the emotional pain. It wasn't, which actually like kind of really surprised me. And I remember at first being like, well, why aren't we talking about the behaviors I'm doing? And then later on down the road, it was like, oh, okay, well, it makes sense. Like, we're focusing on the things that lead to the behaviors, but the
Right.
behaviors kind of take a back seat. Let's focus on the trauma. And so, that with that being my first introduction to any kind of recovery 12-step at all, like, that was just huge for me. I know for me, it really connected all these dots that I knew were out there, that I'm sure other guys know, okay, these things happened in my childhood, and yeah, they're problematic, but I don't know how it led to where I'm at today, to where you
Right.
guys are able to go in and really help people connect the dots with all those things.
There's a huge assumption, and it's said all the time in guy culture, which is everything that happened to me made me the man I am today. And the man that you are today is a limited potential of who you can be, but who you could be in the future is directly related to your ability to understand your relation to self and offer that self to different relationships in the future. And so much of that core piece is related to your ability to process emotions, both difficult and joyful. And when it comes to a man's relationship with emotion, we're really only given a few.
Mm-hmm.
So while some are given the opportunity to say, hey, here's all 64 colors in a Crayola crayon box. Most men that come to BAI, they were given 4 crayons. They were given 4 basic emotions to say, hey, you're allowed to be happy, you're allowed to be angry, you're allowed to be okay, and you're allowed to be lustful. Outside of those 4, we don't really know how to deal with you if you're fearful or anxious. and therefore we relate similarly.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to actually connect, you can't just live on those four.
Yeah.
But the human, I mean, it's remarkable the lives that men that come to be AI are able to create just off those four. So it's never a surprise to us when we see them completely flourish and take off when we give them the other 60.
Yeah.
Or and say, hey, here's the other 60 colors that you get to use to paint your relationships with or to draw your future on. But that is one of the key pieces to begin again, is helping you find your authentic self in relation to others. And in turn, others will show you aspects of their relationship that they've struggled with, and you'll be able to process through in group and in other clinical activities as well. So somebody's relationship to their father or to their older brother or to their cousin, or insert whoever, oftentimes finds their way into the room, and clinically we're able, to help recapitulate that understanding and be able to move it in a direction of resolution.
Yeah. I remember getting the feeling wheel when I first came into BAI, right? And even to this day, I kind of chuckle a little bit whenever I tell people I've got a feeling wheel, and I have shared that feeling wheel with so many guys in the program. I'll hear a guy talking about struggling to name emotions, and I'm like, dude, I was there with you. Again, I was given those four, but even it was really almost only two of those four that I was really allowed to express, right? Yeah. Like culture, like in the way I was brought up, it was, we didn't name emotions, and you weren't, these emotions are bad. Why you're going to be punished if you feel this way or act out on those. So getting that feeling wheel, I mean, I still use it to this day. I've got it on my phone now to where I can pull it up, or if I'm talking to a guy and he's struggling, I'll pull up the feeling wheel and go, hey man, tell me what you're feeling. And that piece was so important. And the other really important piece that I found with it is that, like, it's okay to feel conflicting emotions.
Yeah.
Like, you can totally feel happy and anxious at the same time. Like, that was a concept that was very foreign to me. Even talking more about emotions, it was like, wait, hold on, we're not allowed to do that, are we? And it's like, oh no, you are allowed to do that.
Yeah. It's very much reinforced, in what I would just continue to call like guy culture, of like, you have to make a decision. You're either one or the other, but you can't be both. And that you're, I firmly believe that not everybody, but there's a large majority of men, at least in America, that are being raised to be emotionally dyslexic. Like, we understand the word, like, I understand what it means to feel abandoned, but like, to sit with it and accept it and feel it in my own body, I move right to anger. And I think when you look at anger, I mean, anger is, I would say it's the emotional equivalent of alcohol. Of like, it's socially accepted to a point. Nobody really tells any of the guys where that anger line is between, being angry and then being dangerous. But everybody tells you when you've crossed it.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the feeling wheel too, is that you're able to kind of track that path to see everybody has a different pathway to rage. Everybody has a different pathway to, to violence and explosive anger. But being able to chart that and navigate that is really the easiest way to start to diffuse it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, when I start to feel unheard, or when I start to feel abandoned, or when I, like, these are some of the the pieces in my life that lead to igniting that fuse.
Yeah. I remember being there, in the way that anger, one form of anger was described to us was like it's a triangle, right? Like you got sadness on one end and fear on the other end. And when those basically will form that kind of that arrowhead, which is anger. And that also blew my mind, right? Like totally blew my mind. And today, now, when I find myself, I don't claim to be a very angry person. It takes a lot to kind of get me angry, and unless I'm in the car driving and I got a slow driver in front of me, that's a whole other story, right? But if I'm like really angry, I can go in and look at that feeling wheel and go, what's really going on here, man? Okay, well, I'm feeling anxious and I'm feeling lonely or depressed or overwhelmed. And okay, now these both are coming together and they're coming out as anger. And I can feel myself kind of almost lashing out a little bit in certain ways. So it's like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And I know that I've described that to other guys and they're like, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense as to how those two things can then equal anger. And it's really interesting just how emotions work and just how they can play together. And I mean, guy culture, like we can totally expand on guy culture and what is socially acceptable and almost pushed on to guys these days. It's crazy.
Yeah. Well, and you see it a lot, even in our first, the first day of orientation. A lot of guy culture promotes paychecks, position, and power. And a lot of what's sneaky about this, this addiction, this disease, this compulsive tendency is really, it says, well, if you've got these pieces figured out, then this isn't really a concern for you. If you're the CEO of a company, then you can't have this problem. If you make so much money, then it's really not a problem for you. And so the hope that we have is to be able to call everybody who's suffering into an opportunity to find resolution and move forward.
Yeah.
Regardless of your position, your paycheck, or the amount of power that you wield in your community. So, and that's one of the reasons why we do some of the things that we do, which is to have the 2-week intensive, where everybody starts on the same day, everybody stops on the same day. If you're going to work with intimacy disorders, you have to find safety. And the easiest way to have safety is to build that community. A broken arm is to a cast as community is to intimacy disorders. I'm a firm believer that in order to get tractional recovery, you need 3 things. You need to be able to identify in a community, to say, I'm a member of blank. And this doesn't have to be a fellowship specifically, but it has to be a community that meets regularly, that promotes sobriety, and that you're not the leader of. Because otherwise that's called a cult, and we're not promoting cults.
Right. Nope.
But the other piece is that you have to be willing to ask for help in that community. And the third piece is that you have to be willing to receive help from that community. And consistently, if what we see a lot of is that there are guys that come to us and they're really good at 1 and 2. They say, here's my membership. I'm a member of this particular church or this denomination or this fellowship or whatever, and I'm willing to ask for help. But when you kind of dig a little deeper of like, but are you accepting the help in the manner that it's being offered? That's where the breakdown can happen. And that's where the intensive really gives you an opportunity to maybe hear for the first time what the help that's being offered looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, sorry. I wasn't trying to cut you off there.
No. But the noise oftentimes of position, power, and paycheck is often overshadowed with what it means to actually accept that help.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think that there's also an illusion there of if you have those things or a form of those things that like you're fine, you're doing good. Doesn't matter what
Yeah.
else is going on. You've got the paycheck, the position, you're good.
Yeah.
I know for a long time that was, I really compared myself a lot to people. Well, whenever I get to that spot of whenever I make this much money or I have this girl on my arm or this car, that I'm going to be good. And that to some extent, to some aspect, I got some of those things and it still wasn't enough.
Mm-hmm.
Still wasn't enough.
Yeah. It's the often, I mean, what I have found in my own process of recovery is we believe that happiness is a place with a destination. Mm-hmm. We believe that it looks like, a Ferrari or a Lamborghini or, a corner office. But the most joyful and sustainably happy moments in my life have been interactions with people that truly understand me. Mm. And that they see me, they get me, and that there's a genuineness in the relationship. That there's a piece when they say, "How are you doing?" And you say, "Oh, I'm fine." And they can like look at you through everything else and go, "But how are you really doing?" And I think the other piece too is that the happiness in the relationships. What's interesting is they talk about this. There's this concept of like level 1 and level 2 fun. I don't know if you've ever heard this.
No, I haven't.
So it's called level 1 or level 2, or it comes in different versions. But level 1 fun is what a lot of us believe is fun. It's trips to the Bahamas. It's going on roller coasters. It's things that are fun in the moment. Right? I go and I see a movie and I laugh and that's great. That's level 1 fun. Level 2 fun are things that oftentimes are uncomfortable in the moment, but create a bond and typically 1.5 million inside jokes that are fun looking back. So it's if we went camping and it rained and we had to hike up a hill that was just like disgusting and muddy and we kept slipping and falling, and then now I've got an inside joke with Big Panda, and that's something that we can recall and in times of difficulty to help bring us out of. Right? I've been to a lot of amusement parks. I've never used any of those to get me out of feeling sorry for myself or in a jam. But I can tell you that I've used a lot of level 2 fun, memories, experiences, and relationships, because they're not only just connected with bits of humor, but also grit, struggle, resilience, and trust.
Yeah.
So
yeah. I really like how you broke that down, and that really reminds me of instant gratification versus happiness.
Yes.
Because the things in level 1 that you were describing, instant gratification, roller coasters in the moment, but true happiness comes from being uncomfortable and working through that uncomfortableness to get to later on to look back on and be like, hey man, that was really fun to watch you slide down that muddy hill.
Yeah.
Cussing the whole way down. That was great.
Yeah. And that's something that we try to bake into the intensive, with the daily hikes and being able to get out in nature. Oftentimes for some, this is something that they've never done, or when they've done it, it's been, in kind of an idea of, well, I'll go hiking today because it's 72 degrees sunny and a light breeze and perfect conditions. Not, well, I'm going hiking today because that's what I've committed to, and it's 26 degrees and it's a bit brisk out, but being able to say, hey, we've got a guy that's going to do it with us. It's not necessarily going to be super fun in the moment, but it's going to be a challenge. We're going to push ourselves. And I would imagine that's something that's experienced in the cohort. And it's also something that we believe changes the dynamic of the conversation from the crisis of the moment to actually being able to see people's resilience and character come through. And that gets to be the air that we breathe.
Mm. Yeah, from experience, those hikes, because I was there in February, and those hikes were cold. And coming from flat land, Illinois, to altitude of Boulder, Colorado, in the moment, like they were still more fun, but yeah, they were cold.
Yeah.
And even when it's cold, you still sweat. So
I know.
But those were honestly, it got to a point where like those were what we really looked forward to. There was a lot of bonding that happened in the van on the way to the hikes. And then on the hikes, getting to just talk openly with the other guys, get to know each other more, and then get to be able to do that, and just no matter how much the hike sucked, because I wasn't in shape, the views, the scenery, I mean, and then you add in the connection, and it was like, wow. Looking back on those now, like those were great times.
It's a great place if you're looking for your higher power or your place in the universe. It's a great place to find it in the Rocky Mountains.
Oh yeah.
Because you really start to realize, especially you and I have this in common of being from Illinois, and you start looking at these things that are just massive mountains and ridges, and you start kind of going, these have been here millions of years before me, and they'll be here millions of years after me, and this is my unique opportunity to experience this is pretty profound. The other thing too is that, when we talk about guy culture, guys we don't do a great job with looking each other in the eye.
Mm-hmm.
And this is one of the reasons why hikes are great. Hikes give us an opportunity to do things side by side. I would say if there's a tip for anybody who's looking or trying to find how do you get your person, this could be a husband, this could be a son, this could be another man in your life that you're looking to create a connection with. Doing activities side by side is the easiest way to get guys to open up emotionally. Because to look at another man in the eyes oftentimes is seen as challenging.
Yeah.
Right. It's also difficult to talk about things that we're ashamed of and also look somebody in the eye and tell them, this is what I've done.
Yeah.
But as we do the hikes and we get out there and get after it, guys can start to open up and share things that they didn't even really know that they were sharing.
Yeah.
And if you're not from altitude, nobody's going to ask you about the awkward pauses when you're hiking up a mountain.
Yeah.
Because we just think you're focused on breathing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also a good point.
Also, yeah, and I know too there was a couple times on some of our hikes where, some of the guys weren't physically able to maybe go on the steep route, but yet someone was always willing to stay back with that person and say, "Hey, yeah, no problem.
Mm-hmm.
We'll go on our own our own thing,
Yeah.
which was great for the support, for the morale. Like, it included everybody. Everybody felt,
Yeah.
as far as I was concerned, everybody felt included, right? Like, and that's so important for guys. We long for that support,
Mm-hmm.
and it's so hard for us
So
to ask for
much.
that.
Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. And I think so much of guy culture is, I don't want to burden anybody.
Yep.
This is a situation that I got myself into. I got to get myself out of. And I don't want to tell anybody because nobody wants to hear my problems.
Yeah. Or they
And
won't
the
understand.
reality is, exactly. And this is why the emotion and emotional literacy is such a huge part of that process. Because I don't have to know what it was like for Big Panda's childhood. But if you are using universal emotions of fear, I know what it's like to be afraid. I know what it's like to be unheard. I know what it's like to, you know, feel small or belittled, or, I mean, you start talking about these things now all of a sudden we go from a place of feeling like I'm fatally hip or terminally unique to a place of knowing and understanding just through the emotion.
Mm.
And if I'm missing any piece of this, you have the opportunity to clarify. You have the opportunity to share of like what specifically was fearful or was saddening to that or to that experience. And in doing that, we're creating connection.
Yeah. I remember I hadn't really heard the word empathy. I remember when I first heard that word, it was actually very I can specifically remember it because I was like, I don't know what that word means. It was, I don't know, probably like a week after my discovery. I hadn't entered treatment yet, and my ex had texted me and said, I can't have any empathy for you until I forgive myself. And I remember that word very much
Mm.
stuck out to me because I was like, what does that word, sympathy, and what does that word mean? Then getting into treatment and working on emotions and feelings and realizing, oh, empathy is my ability to relate through feelings to somebody else. And you hit it right on the head, right? It's, I haven't been there. I don't know what happened to you firsthand, but I know that feeling and I can relate to that
Yep.
feeling. And so to be able to be an empathetic man now, it's like, oh wow, like it's totally different. I, again, never knew that word or what that word meant before getting into recovery.
Yeah. And and it's one thing to know it, and it's another thing to practice it. And once you start practicing, being empathetic, I mean, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of building an authentic relationship with another person. And I think that's the amount of times that we've had conversations with guys, or the amount of times that I've had conversations with guys where they're like, well, so then this happened, so then I figure this is what I should do to fix it, without ever asking any questions to the other person. So it's not surprising that we get it wrong when we assume.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Assumptions get me in trouble. They can totally get me in trouble. Absolutely. And that's another, a great point. The word fix it, or, the two words fix it. I think a lot of guys, I know that I was this way. Like, when someone tells me they're hurting, and it's somebody who's close to me, who I have a relationship with, before it was, what can I do to fix it? I want to fix it. I know I did this a lot in relationships. What can I do to fix this? I need to fix this problem. Instead of, let me sit with you in these feelings. I know those feelings. Let me sit with you in it. There's nothing that I need to do to fix it, because I know that BAI, they talked about that fix it model of, okay, your partner shares some emotions with you. She's feeling sad that day, or depressed, whatever. She's feeling some type of way, and then my brain goes, I want to fix this, and then but it's not really about me or what I need to do in the situation. So then I'm going to try to fix it. Well, then that doesn't fix it. Well, then that just makes me feel not good enough. And then that puts me into this shame cycle, guilt cycle. And then next thing you know, I'm going to go act out because I couldn't fix what she had going on. When in reality, I just needed to sit there, hear her, and be there for her in that.
Yeah. And, for anybody that's listening, this is, we're talking about concepts that are simple, but simple does not mean easy. These are incredibly complicated, not complicated. These are incredibly difficult to do in action. It requires a lot of understanding yourself. It requires a lot of understanding of what is actually at play in relationship. And the desire to fix, specifically in relationships, is actually, it correlates with your brain telling you that this is your job because there's actual pain that's being experienced by you. They did this study recently, and I'm gonna tell you that they did the study, and I'm gonna forget what university actually performed it. But what they were doing is they were understanding your field of relationships as it relates to self-serving behavior. And so what they did is they took a bunch of participants together, and they said, hey, we're going to do this thing where we show you a light, and then we're going to shock you with a dog collar, right? And so you're going to experience physical pain. And the light went off, the shock went off, and they did fMRIs. So they scanned the brain. And the part of the brain that turned on is the part of the brain that they thought would turn on, right? They're like, this checks out. We told them what was going to happen. Then it happened. Then what they did next is they said, hey, we're going to bring in what they would call a bystander, right? So they put the dog collar on somebody that you didn't know, right? And they show you the light, and the person gets the shock. Then they did something else, which is that they took a person in your life and they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the dog collar on your partner, your wife, your brother, somebody that you care about, that you have a relational attachment to. And they showed the light, and the person got shocked. But the brain scan actually showed that from your brain's perspective, the anticipation of fear as it relates to the shock was the same as if you were getting shocked yourself.
Wow.
So it's not surprising from a neurobiological stance why there oftentimes is this great desire to fix the relationship, but without actually understanding what needs to be fixed or how to prevent it from happening again. All you're trying to do is switch who's getting shocked. All you're trying to do is say, I want the shock instead of you. Instead of saying, I can change my behavior enough that nobody gets shocked. There's a fix there, but it really requires some of the work that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'll do my research, and I'll find out where it came from, and I'll send it to you. But it's surprising stuff.
Yeah.
The brain is a wild. It's wild, and it's amazing.
It really is. Like it's beautiful. It's scary. It can be dangerous. It can also be our best friend. It can be our enemy. Like I don't know how many times I've just wanted to take my brain out of my head, fight it, because I'm like, dude, we're on the same team. Why are
Yeah.
you not in line? Why are you telling me all these ugly things when,
Hmm.
and I, understanding ourselves and how we grew up, that helps understand why the brain does what it does, and also gives me an opportunity to be compassionate towards myself. Like, my brain is going to these places trying to keep me safe. Bottom
Right.
line is, my brain is trying to keep me safe. And sometimes I have to thank it. Like, thank you for
Hmm.
for being there for me. You're trying to keep me safe. However, right now, we don't need to go there
Yeah.
because I'm not in any danger.
Yeah. And you just hit the nail on the head there, right? As being able to truly understand, difficult conversation from dangers in our sobriety to, what we're future tripping about is such an essential piece to really starting that relational recovery, or that journey recovering in relationships is, that's it, and I know that's how you came up with the name, which I absolutely love.
Yeah. Yeah.
There is no lions, like there's no lions here. We don't have to respond.
There's no lions here. I can still remember sitting in that that clinical room when that was said, and being like, there were two distinct times where I was like, oh my gosh, wow. It was that, and that, like, this is not a moral failing, and that you are not a bad person. Like
Right.
that. Those two instances, I was like, so much visibly on my face, it showed that they're like, what just happened there? What just happened there? And I was like, you guys just blew my mind. Here I am thinking I'm a bad person, or that, my brain thinks that these feelings are going to kill me. And
Yeah.
that's, it's maladaptive coping. I'm trying to keep myself safe here, when really there's nothing to be afraid of, because there is no physical threat. There are no lions here.
Yeah. And I think it's a piece that, when you look at the fix it culture, when you look at the piece that I think is really important, is we get the opportunity to do hard work, or difficult things. But I think at the root of a lot of men's fear is that if I start something difficult, I don't get to be done until it's fixed. As opposed to, I can explore a memory, a feeling, a relationship, and gain insight, and then pull out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's oftentimes what you see in great clinical work is, hey, it's the ability to go deep and then come out and take a breather, and then go deep and come out and take a breather. And I think a lot of men's worry in doing difficult work is that once we start to cry, we won't know how to turn it off. And we're worried about, what happens when I start to cry, and now Big Panda thinks differently of me, or Matt, the clinical director, Matt's going to look at me and think, like, this guy, he can't be saved, and the reality is, and this is the message of hope, is that you were not born this way, which means that you don't have to live this way anymore. It's not going to be an easy road, but it's going to be a meaningful road. It's going to be the amount of opportunity and just like joy and happiness that's in that lane of recovery is amazing.
Yeah.
But it truly starts with, like, being willing to ask for and receive help from others. And sometimes that means you're going to cry.
Yeah. Yeah. I have definitely embraced, that emotional side of me, and realizing that, like, I do feel feelings. I feel them very big, and that there's nothing wrong with that at all. And if I need to cry, I need to cry. And honestly, like, that is very healing to cry. When you're in that frustrated of a place, or that sad of a place, to cry, it is very healing. And with what you guys are doing, and the staff that you guys have out there that are willing to basically hold your hand through those tough memories, thinking, oh, they're going to be so hard on me because I'm not, going into BAI, I had no idea what to think, right? I thought it was going to be some kind of out of prison, ever stand in line, and it was not any of that. But it gave me the space to explore those places, and to explore those emotions, and express those emotions, and then be met with compassion on the other side. Like, these guys knew what I was feeling, and how deeply I felt that. And they were right there with me to grab my hand and help pull me out of it, but also lower me down into it as well.
Yeah. No, and that gives me so much joy to hear you say that, because we specifically searched for that property for that reason, for many reasons, but one of the reasons that you mentioned was, I think a lot of guys that are thinking about coming to treatment think about locked doors. They think about, white uniforms. They think about, hey, we're going to talk about any kind of shame that you have, or symptom that you're struggling with, to the point that you tell us all of it. And the reality is, we found a giant, well, it's giant to me, but we found a large property that is, it's an 1860s Victorian farmhouse that was really selected to say, hey, we want enough space that the guys can have their own area to explore, while also giving it enough character that represents the history that they're coming in with. We didn't want white walls and locked doors. We wanted it to feel like, grandma's house, or an Airbnb that really you can feel at home in. And then equally as important is what you said, the staff. I mean, I'm super fortunate to have a team, to be on a team where we're compassionately competitive, in terms of that we want to take our guys as far as they're ready to go in the 2 weeks, but in a manner that promotes safety in the relationship. For those that have not been to BAI, it's not uncommon to see our guys, joking with each other 5 minutes after a group session, or, there's a certain knowing that you have when you can actually see guys that genuinely enjoy working together. And I'm fortunate that I get to witness it every time I'm on campus. So
yeah, and
special.
I can speak to, and I've talked to multiple guys that have gone through the program there, that have talked about safety, about how, and I know that this is very true for me, that being on that campus, I've been there twice now, that was the safest that I have ever felt in my entire life. And I did not have a cell phone. I was not connected to the outside world. I could not, reach out to my loved ones. And I was with guys that I had just met. And it was, the safest, that so much so that I went back a second time for, the 5-day trauma intensive. And I was super excited about that. I knew what I was getting into going back there, and I couldn't wait to get back. And I didn't want to leave. When it came time to leave, like, I didn't want to leave just because of how safe I felt. I've never felt that safe before in my entire life.
Well, and that's, safety is the foundation it's really the first building block to, to your future.
Yeah.
In recovery. And also just understanding that, it's a challenge by choice culture. It's, when you're with us, we're never going to ask you to do anything that you don't necessarily want to do, but also understanding that the way in which you do it matters, and really walking, like you said, walking alongside of you. Yeah, we're incredibly fortunate.
Yeah. You guys are doing awesome stuff out there. So that, there's so many different models when it comes to treatment. There is the 90 days, 30 days. Obviously, you guys have the 14-day, 2 weeks. In your experience, have you seen, what works the best? Obviously, you guys have the 14-day model. What are the benefits between, all the different time periods as far as, treatment goes, and how long somebody can spend time somewhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. What I would say is 14 days is a really good 14 days in the way that we do 14 days. So I should clarify. There are a lot of residential programs that, they offer just kind of a 14-day residential stay, but they have a rolling admission, which means somebody new is maybe coming in every week. That would be something that I would recommend as like a refresher. If you've been in sustainable recovery before and maybe you're slipping or you're having some lapses and you just kind of need to get back to the basics, shorter residential stays can be great for that. The work that we're doing in the 2-week intensive is really about, hey, recognizing that there's a relationship to self, recognizing how we got here, understanding the why. And that really helps. It helps with a singularly focused behavior that we're looking to stop and really build into relationship and recovery on. Anything, and I will say, I think our 2-week is comparable to a lot of other 28-day programs, when we're working with one particular piece, like intimacy disorders. I would say the benefit to longer stays typically has to do with, and this has just been my experience, but substances. So when you're working with, co-occurring that involves substances, oftentimes the detox process and what you're actually able to relationally connect with can be different. So if in a lot of cases, it can be 2 to 3 weeks before the substances are really out of your system and you're kind of thinking clearly and moving in one direction. And so that's where you can see the benefit from a 30-day program or a 90-day program. And that's really based on, the severity and the relationships back home as well. And just so anybody knows this that's listening, is that's a very common thing that happens. A lot of times intimacy disorders are very, they're very prone to adding on a substance addiction as well. So I'm acting out and I'm ashamed of the acting out that I'm engaging in. So therefore I start to drink. And now I'm acting out when I'm drinking, or I'm using cocaine when I'm drinking. And then sometimes I'm not acting out, but I'm still drinking. And oftentimes in relationship, we go with the thing that is least painful to digest. So I can so from a partner perspective, I can smell the alcohol on your breath. I want you to go and I want you to get treatment for this. I'm not entirely sure exactly what's going on. My body is telling me that there's more, but I don't know what that looks like. And so, really a longer stay, 30 days or more is great for that. Because then we're able to really kind of wrap our arms around both pieces.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense between the different days, and how long treatment and where you should go, how long you should go for that. That makes a lot of sense, and definitely hit on a pretty big piece in my addiction was that co-occurring, the cocaine with the sex. I mean, for me, it almost it allowed me to go to places that I wasn't going sober. Right, porn was always there.
Yeah,
but then you add in an 8 ball of cocaine, and I'm going places that because I didn't want to go there. There was shame involved, and then cutting out the cocaine, because I remember I tried to get clean from coke in 2020, and I wasn't ready for it yet, and the consequences weren't there for me yet, because essentially that's the consequences is what led me to treatment. But then when you took out the cocaine, and then I realized, I was still going to these places sexually. Okay, now something's really going on here that I don't know what's going on. And I just thought that I was an overly sexual person. I got introduced to sex at a young age, or the tape of, oh, when I meet the right person, which when you say this in a room full of guys, everybody is nodding their head of, oh, when I find the right person, I'm going to stop these behaviors. These behaviors are going to stop because that person's going to fix me. And it does not work like that.
Yeah. No, and it's actually the same cautionary tale that I would give to any guy who's getting into recovery early, which is, while your person can't be the singularly or the singular relationship that avoids continued addiction, when you get into early recovery, not having your person also be that singular point to hold multiple roles or multiple relationships of like, there is a reason why we recommend that you get a therapist. There is a reason why we encourage you to get a sponsor. There is a reason why you should have friends just, to go and engage with. So oftentimes the thing that we're trying to avoid is, hey, you had a great 2 weeks with us and things are going to be different at home, but don't turn that relationship into, my wife or my partner is now, they're my lover, they're my best friend, they're my sponsor, they're my counselor, because disruption in any one of those misassignments is going to create relational rupture in all of them. And so all of a sudden now you can't go, you can be mad at your best friend and talk to your sponsor about it.
Yeah.
You can be frustrated at your partner and talk to your therapist about it. But if your partner, your person is all of those things, it's a pretty dangerous place to be.
Yeah. I know that part of my dating plan is I want my partner to have their own network, right? I have my own network, and I want them to have their own network, because there's going to be times where you get mad at me and you're going to need to go talk to somebody about it before you and I circle back, because we eventually will talk about it. Just like when I get mad, I'm going to need to go talk to my sponsor, and then we can circle back. There's going to be times where we need to go our separate ways, and realizing what a network does for me and how much that helps me, that's what I want to look for in a partner is I want them to have their own network. And I think that's a big part.
And not that this is covered in the literature, but going back to that study that I was referencing earlier about, the dog collar and the shocks, I have to believe that from a neurobiological perspective, that's also the reason that we need more people in our lives to experience different levels of joy if being in my network can cause me pain, or the illusion of pain or the fear of pain, then being in my network also gives me the opportunity to experience your adjacent joy and happiness. It's the reason that we have that tribe, that community, that sense of belonging. It goes back to the first of three principles of like, hey, you have to be in a community that you identify with and are willing to be seen as a member of. Because now I get to be excited to be on your podcast, and I get to have a genuine excitement when, you get a promotion, or, when I see you on vacation, because I know how hard you've worked for that, versus seeing you, without the relationship. Well, that promotes envy.
Yeah.
That promotes disdain,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. All really good perspectives there. So kind of back to, BAI, and I know that you guys are working really hard over there to expand and to grow. What are some of the things that you guys have going on that you guys are excited about over there, other than the work, right? Because I know that the work that you guys are doing is exciting and it's just awesome. But what do you guys have anything? What do you guys have going on that you're really excited about?
So one of the thank you for asking, because there is something that's new and it's exciting, which is that we we believe in relational recovery. We believe that in order to be in healthy relationships, both parties get an opportunity. We say voice and choice. Both parties get a voice in what happens next and how that looks. And up until now, the partner involvement has been purely the partner support program, and that's our 12 hours of virtual support that partners get while the guys are with us. But coming next year, we are running our first 5-day partner intensive, specifically for betrayal trauma. And so this is going to be held March 3rd through the 8th in Boulder, Colorado. And we couldn't be more excited, not only about the work that we're going to be offering, but also we actually have a partner in this. So it's a co-collaborated intensive between Begin Again Institute and BTRC. And so BTRC is the Bellevue Trauma Recovery Center out in Bellevue, Washington. And they have a group of amazing clinicians that specifically work with betrayal trauma. And so, our powers combined, we're hoping to have not only just a really great opportunity for partners, but something that will give a lot of people lasting recovery in.
Wow, that's awesome.
So that's that's the new thing. That's the exciting thing. We really want to be able to give that recovery option to everybody.
That's awesome. That's amazing. I think that it's so important to remember that there are betrayed partners out there, and that yes, it is important for the guys to do the work, but also to know that there are resources out there for betrayed partners, and that they don't get to just be left out in the cold while their guy goes and spends 2 weeks in a safe space and figuring out their stuff. That there's also options, and I know that you guys already offer that partner support while during that 2 weeks. So I think that is awesome, man. That is great.
Yeah, it's the person that's going to be great for this, the person that's going to be, our ideal client is going to be somebody who maybe understands at some level, like what's happened, but is consistently responding to cues in the relationship, or, kind of having knee-jerk reactions, or still feeling like there's more. There's, from a neurobiological perspective, that's a tough thing to shut off. like on paper, I understand what happened, but, my reaction, my emotion, my distrust is still there. And I don't know how that is going to look. And so, we're really excited to be able to utilize a lot of the principles that BAI has, the trauma focused modalities of brain spotting and psychodrama and many others, to really be able to offer that process to our partners. So many of our guys have that experience, and they come back and they say, this was amazing. And the process is what they talk about. And I think so oftentimes the relationship is concerned with the product of recovery. How do we make sure that this never happens again? How do we make sure that, I'm not here, or I don't have another discovery? And so even after some of that trust is built, there can still be seeds of concern. Sure. And so that's what this intensive is really geared towards helping.
Yeah, that's awesome. You guys are going to help a lot of people with that. That is really cool, man. I'm really excited for you guys. That's great.
Thanks.
I love that.
Yeah, we're super excited. Yeah, we're looking to help as many people as possible.
Yeah. Well, you guys are doing great work out there, man. I can't speak highly enough of my time that I got to spend up there with you guys, and it was life-changing for me, man. And I know that I'm connected with the other guys that were out there, and I know that they feel the exact same way as I do. And a lot of them listen, so I really appreciate just what you guys are doing and the support that you guys are giving, and you guys are changing lives, man. And it's awesome. It's awesome to see. It's awesome to be a part of too.
And I mean, we feel the same way about you in this podcast. So yeah, let's just keep building something great.
Keep doing layup. Let's see where we can take this thing, huh? Yeah. Awesome. Well, Ed, I don't know if I have any more questions for you. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to bring up or talk about, but I'm just really grateful that I have you guys, the willingness for you and your team to come on the show and talk recovery and just spend time with me like doing this. I really appreciate it, man. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely. I mean, the only thing that I would say to anybody who's an alumni of Begin Again Institute or Boulder Recovery or Ridgeview, our program in Nashville, is that if you have not gotten on the alumni app, feel free to reach out. We're happy to have as many people on there as possible. And we also are in the process of planning our 2024 alumni reunion. So the goal for 2024 is hopefully to get as many alumni back together as possible, to be in brotherhood community and just to really share our successes with one another. Because in my assumption is that as we expand our network, we get to experience others' joy and successes as well, not just their pains. So feel free to reach out, and we'll keep you posted about when those are happening and how to get involved.
Awesome. And what would you say, last thing, what would you say to somebody who is on the fence about treatment and going to treatment? What would you say to that person?
I would say there is a version of what you believe treatment is that's keeping you from going, but is 100% not the reality of what treatment is. Treatment is an opportunity for you to connect with yourself differently, emotionally, spiritually, intellectually than you ever have before. So your best understanding of treatment can't be the understanding that you have in a relationship after treatment. That's, it's hard to describe because it's almost like experiencing a different dimension of sorts. It's really being able to But it's being able to understand yourself on a different level. The other thing that I would say is, like, if you have listened to this podcast at all and you have felt your heart race, your heart skip a beat, you've had goosebumps or chills at any of the things that we've said, you're a good candidate for treatment. Because here's what I know throughout my entire body is that your body knows it's ready to heal before your mind will allow you to commit to that possibility. So when you listen to this podcast and Sako or Matt or Nate or any of our guys are on and they say, hey, this is this or this is that, or another guest shares something and your heart skips a beat, that's your heart saying that it's ready for healing. But your mind is going to start to say, but maybe next year, but maybe next month. It's free to call. It's free to talk to us. There really is no danger in starting the process. And if we feel like you're not a good fit for us, we'll let you know. Because we only have a certain number of spaces every intensive. So we're looking for the right guys to come.
Yeah, well said, man. I'm sold.
Well, yeah, you can come back anytime. Now that you've been, you can come back anytime.
All right. Yeah, I would totally be open to that, man. Again, the work that you guys are doing out there is life-changing stuff, man, and it's an awesome place to be with great people, and you meet even better people while you're there. So again, Ed, thank you so much for coming on, man, taking some time to just share a little bit about your journey, what you guys have going on out there. I mean, I'm really grateful for the connections that I have to you guys and that I've been able to keep these connections up over the last 2.5 years with you guys, and excited to see these connections grow moving forward, man. So just thank you so much for your time, man. I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me.
Absolutely.
Well, definitely, I'll have to have you back on again sometime in the near future.
Thanks. Anytime.
Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it, man.